Hi, everyone. This is Beth from Divine Sense Aromatherapy, and today we are talking about mental health. We have Dr. Kristen Smith joining us. She is a clinical psychologist. She got her degree from UWM and is a lecturer at UWM. She is my friend, an amazing woman, and that has lots of knowledge and insight about ways that we can help ourselves be healthy during this time. So please join me while we talk to Kristen. Thanks, Kristen.
Really happy to have her with us to kind of help guide us and tell us a little bit about what we can do to take care of our mental health, because that's a really important piece right now. There's a lot of different issues that we can talk about during this pandemic and mental health, but, let's just start a little bit with the effect of working from home. So a lot of us are working from home. And it can be really stressful. So what are some of the things that we can do to support those challenges we face while we're working at home?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first of all, thank you so much for having me, Bethany. I'm so excited to be here with you today. So I think the first thing is just to acknowledge a simple fact, which is that this is not what we signed up for, that we are now trying to balance a whole lot of different roles and responsibilities that we did not intend to have to do. We had to learn how to do that very quickly. We had to adapt very quickly. We're still having to adapt as the landscape continues to change. And just to give ourselves a fair amount of grace and understanding at this time, I think is really important. That this is hard and it's a lot of juggling, and there's no right way to do it, and things that feel like they should be manageable, some days they will feel manageable and some days they won't. And to just sort of know that that's okay and that's normal right now, because we just don't know. We don't have a manual for this. We don't know how to handle this any better than how we're doing. So that's the first thing. I think when it comes to balancing and juggling those different facets of our lives, one of the most important things that we can do is to try as best we can to keep to a sort of schedule. And that means having, ideally, and this is going to depend on ages of your kids and the various kinds of roles that you are balancing at home and that sort of thing. But the main goal, I think, is to try to have some time carved out for the different activities that you're completing. Because the reality is that it takes a fair amount of mental energy, for some of us more than others, to shift from one activity to the next. And particularly when we're in a high stress situation, like a lot of us are now, it takes even more. And so just having that, kind of set schedule in your day and those goals of things, and then being really realistic about what you want to try to accomplish in a day. We look at our day and we say, great, I have, 10 hours or 12 hours or 16 hours of my day, and we make this really ambitious list. And the reality is that we are spending a lot of our time just kind of trying to deal with the day-to-day stuff. So being realistic, making a list that's reasonable, that we can accomplish, that we can feel good about. So I think those are a couple of things to do to start.
Well, I love that, because I think during this time I always feel like I should be doing more, or it's I'm on a video call and the kids come walking in, or the dog stands in front of it and it's like, ah! And I feel like it should be a little more smooth and tight and tidy than it is. And I love that you pointed that out, because I think we're all kind of struggling with that idea of talking to our boss and somebody comes walking in or something happens. So I like that, and trying to remember that it's, there is no manual for this. We are figuring it out as we go. The other thing is when we're feeling anxious, because I think a lot of us feel anxious a lot of times for many different reasons. What can we do to change our train of thought?
I think, it's going to depend a little bit. We have, anxiety is one of those things that exists along a continuum. So we all have anxiety to varying degrees. For some of us, it's that it's very mild and minor and we hardly ever see it. For some of us, it's more of a level of anxiety that gets us to get done the things we need to get done, and so it motivates. And then for some of us, it tips over into anxiety that is not adaptive, that is problematic. So a little of the answer to the question depends a bit on kind of where we fall, how much anxiety we're experiencing, how problematic it is, how much difficulty or distress it may be causing. So for your kind of anxious thoughts, your everyday anxious thoughts or moments, I think, one thing is just to acknowledge again that that this is a really anxiety provoking time, that there's a lot of unknown right now, and anxiety often is about the future and not knowing what to expect and anticipating all of the possibilities. And it turns out that it was very adaptive for us um, to anticipate the worst possible outcomes, because that would make us more vigilant. And so some of us are really good at anticipating the worst case scenario. And so I think a couple of things in that. One is just to acknowledge, the base level of anxiety for most of us is higher than usual right now, I would say. And then to say, to just remind ourselves that our minds are often going to go to the worst case scenario, or at least trying out a few different worst case scenarios. And that those are things that we are primed to think about, but that doesn't make them true. It doesn't make them givens. Just to remember that's that's part of how we work. That's part of how we operate, and it protects us in times when we're in real trouble. But most of the time, day to day, especially even now, for those of us that are in quarantine and we're doing what we can do, just to remember that's all you can do. There's a lot that's out of our control that doesn't feel good, and it's normal to feel anxious about that. But just because the worst possibilities float through our minds, it doesn't mean that those are the things that are going to happen. And I will add that for the there's a decent percentage of the population where that anxiety does, as I said, tip over into being really problematic and really significant. And when that's the case, what I would recommend is certainly to be reaching out for support. So there are a lot of mental health organizations and agencies that are offering support via telehealth right now. So not to be afraid to ask for help if you think that this is really becoming an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to point out that just because you think it doesn't make it true, because sometimes, the wheel gets spinning in your mind, and then you're focused on these things, and then you start to panic, and it's, this cycle. So if you can just say no and take a step back and, clarify what you're really thinking and what's really true, I think that helps a lot.
And any practices that you use in other times when you're stressed may help now. So, I'm a big fan of do the simple stuff first and do it consistently and do it as well as you can under the circumstances. So the kinds of things that generally help us to manage our anxiety, for a lot of us, exercise is helpful. You don't have to be trying to accomplish major things right now while you're working out from home and, and exercising around your neighborhood, but you can get a little bit of movement each day, and that might help a little bit. For some of us, mindfulness meditation is really helpful. For some of us, aromatherapy is really helpful. So whatever you use to really, under normal circumstances, whatever you find helpful as a stress reliever, make sure that you're making use of those things now. And if you can, build those into your daily routine, because I think that really is going to be beneficial.
So I have one more question before we go, which is, how do you find connection when you're feeling separated and disconnected? And is there a way to find reassurance? Because I think a lot of us feel very disconnected, and then we, become unsure of ourselves, and it affects our confidence. Is there any, anything you can comment on about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important, Bethany. I really, what we know, going back decades in the research, is that the biggest predictor of happiness, just generally speaking, is having good quality social support. And of course, what most of us are, we have the health concerns related to the current situation. But for a lot of us, what we're really missing, particularly if we're not currently facing health problems ourselves, or our close loved ones aren't, is we're missing our people, we're missing our connections. So I think this is a critical thing to identify. So the first thing is, if you do have the connections, is to use them. Teach your loved ones how to use the various video call technologies that are out there. Figure out a way that you can look at people's faces and hear their voices at the same time. I think, one of the things that just I personally have found incredibly uplifting is when I take my dog for a walk around my neighborhood. There's so many signs and windows and things out on the marquee of the local theater that say, we're in this together. So even in those lonely moments when there isn't someone to call, or you're not really sure who to connect with, or whether that's even what you need, just to remember that the one thing about this is we are all in this together. Everybody's experiencing this in different ways with different sets of stressors and challenges, but it's a shared experience that we're having. And then, the other thing I think too is, we talk a lot about the downsides of social media. Social media gets a bad rap sometimes. This is probably one of the places where social media has been a real lifesaver and game changer for a lot of us, because it's a way that we can continue to stay connected. So just know, if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling stressed or frustrated or overwhelmed, that there are other people out there who are probably feeling that way too. And so if you reach out, usually people are more than happy to step in and to say, hey, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm ready for you. Whatever you got, just lay it on me. But it's so that to know that it's okay to reach out and to ask people, just to say, I'm not feeling so good today, I just need to talk to somebody, I think can be really helpful.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate all of your insight and sharing your knowledge. You are an amazing friend, and always really great at kind of helping steer us in the right direction. And I appreciate your time. And thank you so much, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Bethany. It's been a pleasure.
All right. You have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us.